And welcome. We're here at Fort Union, sometimes known as the first Walmart in North Dakota, and we have here an 1872 example of the #1 commodity that leaves from Fort Union from Native women. It's a 1872 buffalo robe. This is not heavy. It weighs 5 pounds. This is from it's had better days. The tail fell off probably during World War I. I got it on eBay. The one hallmark of native done buffalo hides is they weigh 5 to 7 pounds with hair on. With hair off, the target weight for this 2-year-old, 3-year-old buffalo cow is about 2.5 to 3 pounds. So that would make a 26 to 30 pound, 40 pound buffalo hide teepee. It's June right now, and June and July is the time the women would work hides, not me. But once again, you can't find good women anymore. Outside the fort and off and away, they would work buffalo hides for replacement teepees. But the #1 commodity this time of the year would have been the fat coming off cow, not bull buffalo, but cow buffalo. And the bourgeois here, the factor of Fort Union, would trade away bladders of grease. So oil from the cows, either from the bones, with the bone marrow. That's the delicious fat, tastes like donuts. Here we had a deer died on the side of the road, and it's the bone oil that is known in our world as neatsfoot oil. When you heat this up, it actually tastes like frying donuts. It's a very good, delicious cooking oil. It doesn't last quite as long. But these hides are skinned, they're scraped, they're then oiled, or not a lot of oil, and not even the whole brain of a buffalo, usually about 1/3 or 1/4 of the brain, and just a handful of oil per hide. And that would only stay on for 4 days.
Can I ask a question? Why the brain?
Why the brain? It's an emulsifier, and it really does not tan the hide. As people, that's a misnomer. The brain, this one came from the same deer. It had a bad day on the side of the road. I get hungry because this is what I ate as a kid for breakfast. So these are deer brains. They cooked about 5 minutes, and I cook them in creosote. The chemical reaction is smoke. It's not the brains. This just washes the internal glues out of a hide. And that's what you're doing when you're doing buckskin. You're trying to wash the internal glue, the loose non-structural glue, away from the fibers, which are also collagen and glue. And what you want to leave behind is fiber. And that's what the teepees, that's why they're lightweight. You would make your teepee once a year, maybe once every 2 years. And what really drives reusing the teepees, you need it for moccasins, and it's been used and smoked all winter. So it's really good hide for clothing. And you got plenty of buffalo, so you make another teepee. And this is done by women usually in June and July. And you don't do it in the winter because the wool is too long on the buffalo. But now is the time when buffalo are gathered because they've been eating green grass. They really got a lot of fat on them. And about 20 to 30% of any given herd is cows. The rest are bulls. So even though it may look like there's massive herds out here, very few of them are edible. And this happens in Africa too. It's not just the people going after fat cows. Hopefully they don't have calves, but they are producing fat. It's also the predators. So bears and wolves, they're going after the cows as well. So the population of cows is never the same as that of bulls. The problem with bulls, if you killed a 4 or older year-old bull, the skin is going to weigh about 35 pounds. It's just not usable. And the Smithsonian taxidermist Hornaday came to eastern Montana and says white people often make the same mistake. They come out onto the plains, kill the big bull, and when they're butchering it, they realize what a horrible mistake they just made. Bulls don't produce wool much at all. In an older age, they don't produce any fat, and the meat is really tough to deal with. You have to really slow cook for a long period of time. But the hide is also not even and consistent like any age of cow. And this is a 3-year-old buffalo cow. The hides, you just don't want to do as I did and flesh them and frame them. They can rip. And that's what I was just telling my friend. This is a hide that was fleshed and scraped and dried. And this happens 100% of the time with me, maybe not with all people. But the fibers are not that durable, particularly if it's been a hot summer and it's at the end of the summer. This rips like paper. And I don't recommend people do the buffalo straight from the hide because it just gets brittle and rips. What avoids this is soaking it in the river or soaking in barrels of water for about 3 days, changing the water 3 times a day. That gets rid of the loose glue. And if you frame it, that's the worst case scenario. That's going to stretch the fibers out and the glue overwhelms the fiber. So I leach the hides and then I frame them, and as a result I get a hide that's pliable and is not brittle. So leaching is a very important old habit, but a lot of times it doesn't show up in recipes. Buffalo and antelope are particularly susceptible to this ripping and the brittle effect. I did this for years and didn't know what was going on and found out by mistake. So there's game for thought. I don't use any salt, and native people didn't use salt. You would need thousands of pounds of salt if you're doing 8 buffalo in one day. It's just not going to work. But they definitely took the gelatin off and dried the hides. This time of the year they usually stake them out on the ground, and that's the fast way to do a lot of hides at one time. The lace holes that are cut in the edge of the hide, Buffalo Bird Woman, there's a lot of information I get. This is her rule of thumb. It's the distance between your thumb and your pointing finger between lace holes. So it takes usually me about 30 minutes to lace a square skin hide. When the hides are skinned, another European habit that's just come in since I think about 1880s is hanging the animal and cutting to the inside of arms and legs. That's not the way it's done around the world. The way animals in field are skinned, you can look at this up on Inuit caribou skinning today or Australian skinning in pasture sheep. They square skin it. The front of the front leg is where the cut's done, back of the back leg, and the belly skin. If the hide is too big, too heavy, you cut the hide in half, like this cattle hide, and you cut it head to tail. And Rodney Douglas is out in the yard. He's got a half buffalo bull that he's parfleshed and staked to the ground. And these are too heavy to handle, and women don't want to pick up a 75-pound wet hide, so they cut them in half, particularly if it's just too big and large. Some teepees have half hides in them. It's not a big deal. It's just you have to look after yourself when you're doing these skins. The only active ingredient is the brain, and this is a deer brain, which works just as well, and it's delicious. But you cook that for about 5 minutes, get it opaque, and you rub it into the skin. If you don't have brains, or maybe you're not really game for brains, any kind of soap will do, like ivory snow or yucca root, which grows here in North Dakota. This is about as far north as it grows, and into Montana. The root will make a soap that's as strong as Dawn dishwashing detergent. And if you just add the root to water, that's the result. In cold water it'll foam up. This will do the same thing as the brain. The bottom line, they're emulsifier. They're going to wash out the connective loose glue that's in between the fibers and give you soft, pliable buckskin that you can make a teepee out of at very light weight. And I have the swatch here. So this is the target. Sorry to not have a fully softened hide, but this is the texture of what we're looking for. It should feel like velvet. Very light, easy for a needle to go in. That's a sign of good buckskin. Or if most people don't use needles, they use awls, and that's why buckskin is always needed. If people do bead and quill work, they use last year's TP. This makes all this work that she has on here a lot easier to do. Because if she used commercial hide, she would probably get carpal tunnel syndrome by the time she does all that work. So the awl has to go in and slide in very easily, and it needs to hold up. The brains don't tan the hide again. The brains just basically wash the loose glue out of the hide so that you have a lot of sanding, a lot of rubbing. Some people cable. I don't have hands that can do that anymore to soften this, but sanding will do most of this. The best way to do this is wet. You wash in warm water, you wash the brains out, you wash the oil out, you wring it out, and you don't want to leave that grease in the hide or the rats find the hide and eat it up like we have here. This was oiled hide that I had brained, And I'd smoked it ahead of time, and in one night, the pack rat ate it. So you have to protect them when they're in the oiled state. The other problem with greasy hides that are buckskin is in this sunlight right here, they'll get grease burn and rip and fall apart too. So the grease can help soften the hide, but it cannot stay in the hide, or else you're going to be in trouble fast with UV rays the way they are today. And I live in the mountains outside of Butte, Montana. The pack rats would eat your teepee alive if you left the oil in it. The skins are then wrung out, whether they have hair on them or hair off, and you wring it out like you're doing laundry. You then rub the hide, maybe on a frame on a sunny day like today, until the hide is dry. And if it's not fully soft the way you would like it, wet it again and do it again. Maybe a little bit of brains, but with buffalo hides, they don't have a lot of fibers. It doesn't need a full buffalo brain per hide, as some people do with deer hides. It's usually about a third or fourth of the brain per hide. And right now it's June, so this is teepee hide season. I'll show you real quick. We have our model here. Would you mind wearing the robe?
Oh, sure.
I'll put it on her. So I've got to find the head and tail. It probably fell off during World War I. But there's an etiquette to wearing a buffalo robe, and she's about the right height. Are you married?
Mm-hmm.
You are? Darn. Okay, it's hard to find women in North Dakota. But the head goes, there's an etiquette. It goes to the left side, the tail to the right. It's as if the buffalo's running around her clockwise. You need enough to cover the top of her noggin, but she shouldn't be dragging the buffalo robe on the ground. It should be above her moccasins, so that it basically is what she's going to be sleeping in tonight. She doesn't need a muddy robe. She needs to be comfortable and elegant, which she is already. So it's about an 1872 buffalo robe, and she's pretty much dressed for the North Dakota winter. Now, if it's raining, this is not how she wears it. She needs to change gears. The head still goes on that side. This is for rainy weather. And this sheds the water off and keeps her warm and dry. So it's to keep the hair on the outside and shed the water off. And that's the whole story for now.
Very cool. Thank you.
You bet.